There he is, the man, the solution.
Yeah, your Wonder Twin, right? We got the Wonder Twin shirts on today. I'm excited.
Oh, we had a good clubhouse room last night.
Yes, we did.
That was fun.
Yeah.
A lot of fun people came in. All right,
that meant actually I had to stay up until about 1:30 in the morning, which is the reason I have bags under my eyes to get my work done.
Well, what's your excuse all the other days?
I never stop, buddy. I never stop. What can I tell you?
All right, so today, first Thursday of the month, which means we're coming to you live on DWin. I'm excited about today's topic, Sandy, for a lot of reasons. I think during the pandemic, especially during the lockdown, a lot of dealers had to change course and adopt a lot of new things, which I think have kind of evolved into some mainstays here. And we're talking to some real experts that I'll let you introduce when we bring them on. But we're going to be talking about BDC. We're going to be talking about, retention, how to improve retention. Is there a bigger challenge for dealers in the industry today? Other than maybe getting inventory right now. So.
Well, certainly inventory is a challenge, but I would say that retention is at the forefront of every smart business owner's mind right now, especially coming off of 3 days in a row of being immersed in Jay Abraham content. Yeah.
So we're going to optimize. We're going to talk optimizing retailing, retention, all things that relate to this, how the BDC can help, how the role has evolved, especially evolved over the last 12 months. But let's do so we don't waste any time here. Let's do our video, and then we'll bring in our expert panel. All right,
let's go.
All right.
Hey, listen, the fourth box isn't for everybody. It's only for those people that want to have.
All right, let's get this show on the road, everybody. Welcome to DWin. First off, this is a discussion amongst dealers, general managers, service managers, marketing managers. We want a lot of interaction, a lot of Q&A.
Shoppers expect a seamless digital experience in everything that they buy, right? I mean, we're all consumers also, and that's how we shop for things. So for so long, we've been talking about digital retailing tools, digital buying tools, even just ways to contact, be ready to text with a customer, be ready to chat online with a customer. They don't want to pick up the phone as much anymore. They don't want to walk into your dealership and spend as long of a time as they might have in the past. And so, of course, with COVID last year, to your point earlier, it just accelerated this change that we had been seeing for a long time. But all of a sudden, we had so many people in our industry that were thinking, okay, I got to do something about this.
Basically, we don't sell cars. We help people buy cars. I don't think anybody likes buying a car. So enter COVID. You take the same attitude and you just apply it to the commodity car. And it becomes, for us at least, an easier process.
Consumers spent a lot less time in the dealership. They were able to work through a lot of their process digitally. And so that consumer satisfaction went up. And so, we anticipate seeing that continue. And, shame on us as an industry if it doesn't, because we need to carry this momentum forward.
So for us, it was really just about making it as I know a lot of dealers say this, making it as easy as possible to buy a car, but we actually mean it. We don't want people to spend 6 hours here.
Yeah.
All right, here we are. What I loved about that recap real quick, I loved what Cole said when he says, we don't sell cars, we help people buy cars.
Absolutely.
And I wrote that down when he said it, because I want to keep bringing it up on different things on social and different things when I talk to people, because I just think that is a great mindset shift. When we hop on Clubhouse later, I'm gonna bring that up because I love it. So
Scott, I mean, it speaks right to the fact that most people don't want to be sold, but they want to be assisted and guided through the purchase decision process so that they own the product that we're selling.
And it's an excellent segue into what we're doing now, because when you really think about it, the BDC, their role is to provide a lot of info, especially on the front end, front end or back end, it doesn't matter, to provide a lot of information, to help people get the information they need, to make the process better. And so great opportunity to go from that right into our topic today. So I'm going to bring them on stage here, And I'm so used to saying stage from Clubhouse. I'm going to bring them on the screen here.
Yep.
And I'll let you do the intros. Right.
Well, I'm excited. I'm actually going to defer our two special guest intros today to John Traver, but I want the great honor of introducing John Traver because he's somebody that I have had my eye on for decades. John's got like a 28-year track record of building businesses that are designed to help his clients build their business. And there's something to me that's really gratifying in helping your clients build their business, which ultimately ends up building your own. And that's the perfect business model, in my opinion. His last firm he sold to ADP, which is a Fortune 300 company. He's been involved in retail automotive. He's been involved in the commercial real estate space, the self-storage space. And, you know, it's funny because he's a real innovator. He's a guy that focuses on making a positive impact for those that he's working with. And so innovators that can do that and actually deliver the results get really high marks in my book and gain a lot of attention in the marketplace. So it's my high honor to introduce John Traver, and I'll let John introduce Sarah and Michael Coleman.
Hey, Sandy, thank you. That's overdone. You know, we've done this stuff with some incredible people that don't get to sit on this panel today. The Bob Gowers, the Ryan Morrisons, the John Purdy's, Chrissy Ellis, who was our director for BD College, who passed away last weekend from COVID. I mean, people that if you're watching this show today, you may have come through our college in Houston and you got to know those people. So as you know, just like raising a family, it takes a village. And so you don't do any of this stuff yourself. But you too, my friend, have an incredible story. And I've watched your work over the years. I mean, you're in and out of stores. You see the macro. And so what I love about your work is you always see the change in the trend, not just the trend. Yeah. And that's really where you surf, right? So listen, Scott reaches out. What was it, Scott? Year and a half ago. By the way, thanks for having us on Hollywood Squares here. This is, I feel like Rick Little, yeah. If there wasn't Zoom and COVID, that might be how it feels.
Yeah. Well, but, John, listen, I have to tell you, John, Scott's often been compared to Paul Lynn.
Well, there you go. Hey, brother. Sorry, man. We're going to double team you today, I guess, right? Yeah. But Scott and I were sitting in this same room.
Hey, John, I don't want to interrupt you. The only reason Sandy's able to say that is I think they were born in the same year. But
here we go. Over the table, right? So, Scott, you brought this up last year, and it made a lot of sense. And you and I have bantered a little bit. I had COVID December, early January, so we couldn't do it when we wanted to. But thankfully, walked through that, and we're here. So, our guest today, I'm looking forward to talking about who's here. So, Sarah Vantine and I met about what, Sarah, a year ago, roughly?
Yeah, it was a year ago in Las Vegas.
And so everybody understand the backdrop. Fixed Ops Roundtable, Ted Ings has an incredible event that's grown to 1,000 plus attendees. He's doing a lot of this virtual, obviously, today because of COVID. Each time they do the event. And Sarah really stood out to me right away. She's a director for the Scott Clark Auto Group. She's BDC Director, but they have 3 stores. It's part of AMSI, largest privately held group in the country. And she's incredible. She, too, knows how to see the macro. She's grown from inside the organization, showroom floor, worked her way up. She has a service BDM that is a part of her team, a sales BDM. And so she really is going to be able to bring our audience today some answers and some clarity on what's working as they work their way through not only the COVID impact, but BDC as it innovates itself today. So she's bright, she's talented, she loves what she does, and I'm thankful she said yes to be here. So thanks for joining us.
Thank
Scott,
you, Sarah.
say something?
Yeah, Sarah. So we actually met at that exact same conference in Vegas. That's the first time I was introduced to you as well, but it was brief, but we met there as well. Good coincidence.
And it's been an awesome, I mean, just the different connections, different communication that we've had since then. It's really just upped my game. And I'm very, very fortunate to connect with both you, Scott, and John. I've learned a lot from y'all.
I lean on her for sound bites on BDC stuff. I just want to make sure what we're doing is in touch and and she's been a great guide. So Sarah, thanks again for being part of this today. I know the audience is going to benefit. Michael Coleman has been a dealer client of ours, and he's really become a friend through this process. And when Michael and I talked, was it 9 years ago about Service BDC?
Right.
He said, look, you're going to think I'm crazy. I'm going to tell this story. I hope you don't mind. I said, what are you doing? What are you up against? What does the market look like there? And he's just outside Texarkana, which is what, Michael, 800,000 now, 600,000?
Right.
Okay. So he's competing in a rural town outside of that, about what, 45 miles?
25 miles.
Okay. So he's feeling the heat, right? And I said, what are you doing to compete for primary market and all the basics that we all know we got to win it? And he said, you're going to think I'm crazy. This is 2012, just so you know. I said, okay, fire away. He said, well, for service, he said, I take retired folks, put them in my pre-owned inventory, and I have them take that vehicle to my customer. He said, I have a lot of doctors and lawyers and repeat customers. And he said, I just leave them with a vehicle and I get their vehicle and bring it back. That was pick up and deliver, folks. And so I smiled and I said, he goes, I know you think I'm crazy. I said, no, I think you're doing exactly what we should all be doing. If you want the service business, just go get it. I mean, it's already yours. You wrote the check. Just go get it. But that's how he thinks. And so when you reached out, I was like, hey, I want to see if he's willing to sit in on this he's line 3, dealer principal. He's got multiple locations and stores and franchises. So he's dealing with manufacturers as well as the street. And it's pretty cool to be able to have you sitting in on this, giving us your 2 cents. So there you go. There's our opener.
That's awesome.
Thank you very much.
John, you're hired full time. I'm going to take a back seat.
Yeah.
I've been looking for someone to replace Cerami for a year and a half.
There you go.
I don't really have much to do, so that sounds great.
Hour.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what we learned right when COVID hit, because let's face it, right in the middle of March, COVID hit, and I think the dealer world, along with all industries, unless you were selling masks and toilet paper, you were sitting there thinking, oh crap, what is going to happen here? What are we going to do, right? I know a lot of businesses took drastic action. We were fortunate in auto that once they passed, I think, the initial PPP and dealers got their legs under them a little bit, things started really cranking along actually very well in the auto industry. But what were some of because I know the BDC played a key role, especially when everybody went to skeleton crews, all right? And obviously we were able to stay open. So what were some of the key roles that happened there that you see evolving into a more permanent structure? And I guess where I'm going is, how is 2021, as it relates to the BDC, going to be the same or different as it was in 2020?
Sarah, you want to take that one first because you were sitting right in that hot seat, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So I'll start out with just how it originally, all went down for us in North Carolina. And I don't know, depending on where you're located in the country, you had different things with lockdowns, different requirements by your county, different requirements by your state. For us, we actually had 2 dealerships out of our 3 that we could not have more than 10 people inside the building. And that really put a huge dent in our sales, sales opportunities, and also definitely put a dent in service. So we were faced with something where we had to really think like, okay, if we can only have a very limited number of personnel physically inside 2 of our dealerships, how do we service these customers and how do we take care of them with sales? So one of the first things that we did early on, so, we're very fortunate that with our business development center, we had this, we built it in 2015, 2016. And so we had a really, really well-performing, high-functioning call center. And I'll say that my team with that's part of the reason we were able to switch gears very, very quickly and make the adaptations that we needed to make sure that our customers were taken care of, because we already had the team in place that was ready to go when stuff got crazy. But for us, one of the biggest changes that we had to do was eliminate the receptionist position from those stores. And part of the reason for it was because we physically couldn't have a receptionist sitting there answering the phone and directing certain phone calls where they needed to go. It actually turned out to be a tremendous benefit to us. And that's actually something that we're going to continue doing into 2021, because one of the things that we uncovered was that having that additional stop in our phone, even though we had an auto attendant or an auto phone free, press 1 for sales, press 2 for service. Even though we had those prompts, a lot of people were winding up at the switchboard. And so then that's an extra stop because the customer may not know, they have a general question and they're not really sure if it's sales or service or finance. They don't really know where it needs to go. So having that stop, the receptionist would then try to, figure out where it needed to go, and it may get to the right department, but if it didn't, then it would come right back to the receptionist, and round that customer went. So in eliminating that stop and actually having our business development center field all of those calls, what we uncovered is the vast majority of them were service related. Even if on the surface, it didn't seem like it was a service related call. So, for example, someone calling in and saying, hey, I've got a really interesting problem going on with my car. I know I bought this extended warranty in finance. And, I've pressed the finance key and, are you finance? Well, technically, yeah. I mean, our department's trained on that. We have a finance BDC also in-house in our service BDC. So that conversation then would pivot and we'd say, yes, what's going on with your car? Let's look up your warranties and talk about this. And at the end of the day, that was a service appointment because the customer has a concern and we have the right rep on the phone that's able to take the ball and just absolutely run into the end zone with it and go ahead and book that service appointment. So one of the interesting things in 2020 that we had to adapt because COVID forced us to do it. We couldn't have personnel in the showroom. It's actually something that now in 2021, we completely have rethought that process with having a receptionist answer those phone calls, and it probably will never go back to the front desk for that process.
Hey, Sarah, can I ask a quick question? I love the fact that you have F&I specific BDC personnel at the ready. How much cross training do you do so that there's a fluid exchange of information with incoming callers so that they don't get passed from person to person to person?
So training is a huge part of our development. And one of the things that in how we structure our business development center at our stores, my mentality with my team has always been, you need to give the people on the phone the same attention and training that you do your frontline personnel. Just because they're a voice that's on the phone doesn't mean that they're not empowered to make the right decision for the customer. Now, of course, there's certain things that we can't do over the phone. We can't hold the phone up to the car and figure out what's wrong with it. A technician needs to do that. We need to have the car physically in the service lane and in the shop to really make the determination of what's best for the car. But as far as warranties and looking up the training for that, I mean, it's just processes. So what we do is we train actually all of our reps on finance and having a base understanding of, all right, well, here's the finance department and here's what they do. Here's how they benefit the sales department. Here's all the information about the different warranties and policies that we sell as a store. And here's what you need to know about them. And when you get that phone call and the customer has a question about it, here's what you need to do to troubleshoot it further. Let's ask some additional questions. Let's figure out why they're calling, qualify and triage that phone call. And so all of our reps are cross-trained on how to do that. And we also incentivize them on those finance calls and the service, appointment calls. So for a rep, that's a win-win handling that customer properly. And also one of the things that I think has changed in terms of mentality of customers during COVID is, a lot of things that we're able to do now are kind of click one call, one click, and you're able to accomplish your purchase or your transaction within, a very short window of time. Car dealerships, historically, we are awful at that. We really make it difficult for the customer to go through the process of just finding out basic information like, when does my warranty expire? Or, could this potential issue be covered by, warranty? Prior to us having a finance BDC, what would happen is a customer would call in with that question, get transferred to the finance department, probably hit somebody's voicemail and never get a call back. And that would be a huge problem. And we actually have gained retention and business because we're able to convert that person, have that information up front, but then ask those other qualifying questions to then secure the service appointment. And I mean, just having all of that within one department, it doesn't matter what rep gets that phone call, they all know that that's the process and how to handle it.
So there's two things that I want to distill out of what you just said. There's just brilliance in there. First thing is the empowerment is only effective if you've properly trained and developed your staff so that they have the tools necessary within them to handle the incoming calls and having processes to back up and support that. And the other piece that I love is that you engineered your department and your processes and your cross-training to fit the consumer or your customer's needs versus how the dealership is structured, right? We tend to kind of reverse engineer things based on what's going to work for us at the dealership versus what's best for the customer, and then create that efficient process to deliver the information in one click or one step. Awesome stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and Sandy, I just want to sandwich that real quick and say, both whether we're looking at Steve Jobs or we're going to Amazon with Bezos, they both start where? With the customer. And so when you get a chance to see somebody in her role that has all that responsibility and see where they start, work their way back, the encouragement for our audience is, hey, look, the answers are out there. And then just work your way backwards. So, Scott, I'm sorry.
No, it's. Let me tell you one thing that Clubhouse has done. I stop interrupting people because they just mute me.
Hey, did you see Ben Stock? Brian had reached out and he said, "Is this on Clubhouse today?"
Yeah.
Yeah, and I went to that app. I do too.
This is a topic we need to take to Clubhouse.
And we will. We will.
Good.
So, Sarah, when people think of BDC, they think of how it relates or how it impacts the sales side and the service side. You've been talking a lot about F&I. Mm-hmm. And so I am curious, you've already said that the majority of calls coming in seem to be service related. What is second? Is it sales or is it F&I questions?
Well, so that's interesting. I would say really for our perspective, I mean, the people that are looking to transact or have a sales conversation, if they're calling for sales, they're pretty far down in that funnel.
Right.
They've really made a decision with the dealership as far as, okay, like I'm ready to pull the trigger and I'm ready to buy something. That usually, if we get that phone call, that's really the nature of the phone call that we're getting. So I'll say this, seldom do we get the informational, I just need to kind of find out phone calls, or where they're seeking guidance when it comes to sales. For service, I mean, it's interesting because I would say the majority of the stuff that comes in for finance is service, but there is definitely a sales element to it. We have people that are questioning, well, what are the interest rates on this car? Or what do you think is a good interest rate right now? Those kind of questions we still get on the finance side, in which case we do the same thing. For our department, we don't really handle the sales piece of it. Our store, we have a really robust internet sales department and a really good finance team. So if it's getting into kind of the more sales-oriented phone calls, we really kind of trade it off to that department. Okay. But the ones where it's informational and there's something like they've already purchased and there's a question about the policy, usually that falls into the realm of service. If I've got a question about, like, does my lifetime warranty cover, I've got this weird noise going on and I think it might be something with my transmission, that should be alarm bells going off in the service, BDC rep's head. This is a service appointment call all day long. And we can go ahead and get the information the customer needs to know and help supply that, but then in turn, do what's right by the customer and set up the right expectation for the next steps in the process. And historically, we never put two and two together. That call normally in a dealership would be, okay, I bought, my car and I know my finance manager was Bob. And I'm going to call Bob because now I've got a question about my warranty.
Right.
Well, Bob's on vacation for a week. And so that customer's kind of left hanging trying to figure out what to do. And the longer that you keep that customer waiting, their stress level builds. And they start getting really uncomfortable. And then they start kind of wondering, did they make the right decision with that warranty? All those other horrible questions and things pop into their head. We can alleviate all of that if we just cut that out. We can go ahead and really take them through the process. And the customer really, they follow the path of least resistance. If you give them the option to go ahead and book the service appointment, because that's going to be what we're going to have to do anyway, and you can facilitate that all in that phone call, the customer is going to go right along with it. And interestingly enough, so I know we'll probably get into more things later in our discussion about some of the things that BDC reps need to keep in mind when they're trying to be more engaging and compelling with our customers. But there's some interesting data that actually we just did this week that I'm training my team on that really highlights that in a really deep level.
Good, because
I'm sorry, Scott, go ahead.
I was going to say good because we're definitely going to get into that topic, but go ahead, Sandy.
Yeah, don't worry, sorry, we will dig in. But the thing I liked most about what you said is on those incoming calls, which can tend to be painful for the customer because, Joe was my finance manager, Sally was my salesperson, and now they're going to reach out to that point of contact. What you're doing is you're disseminating the nature of the telephone call, directing it to the right party, or addressing the questions that you're capable of addressing right there on the spot. It's an immediate attention paid to the customer that ends up working towards solving or resolving the problem that they're calling about. And I would suspect that the end result is a customer that's delighted with that process versus, disturbed and disappointed.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And it's a huge retention builder too. I mean, it's interesting because that process, we have other AMSI stores in our market, and that warranty that we sell, even though like we may sell it at Scott Clark, you could get that warranty or that issue resolved elsewhere at even our sister, our other locations that aren't affiliated with the Scott Clark group. And one of the interesting things that we found that also customers that have bought that policy from our competition get really frustrated when they're trying to find an answer from the finance manager that they bought it from at our other stores. And what happens is they call us and they're like, I know that, that y'all are also, affiliated with this warranty and I've called the warranty company and they've told me that you're another dealer in the area that can service my car. And we can have, even though we can't necessarily see the policy information because we didn't sell it, but we can still have an educated conversation with the customer about it and then proceed to book that appointment.
Amen. Good for you.
Hey, Sandy, one of the things that jumps out at me as Sarah kind of outlines this, you guys were talking about Jay Abraham as we opened, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I've had my share of Jay Abraham events, the 5-day where he changes suits 3 times a day. And, he's really, really good. In fact, Michael, Sarah, he is credited. You remember Wendy's Where's the Beef commercial? Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
That was one of his pieces.
Yeah.
He's super creative. Anyway, he has a saying, and here's the teaching point that kind of draws a circle on what Sarah's talking about. 90% of the population is silently begging to be led. Hey, just point me in the right direction. But they won't say it, but that's really what they're saying. And so that came to me back in 1993 or whatever it was when I was sitting with them in LA. And I'm like, man, that is so simple and it rings so true. And then so you listen to people and it's like, there it is, there it is, there it is. 9 out of 10 times they're just basically saying, help me.
They're looking, John, they're looking for a guide to help them get them through the challenge that they have in front of them or the problem that they have in front of them. And if we can solve their problem, then retention is soon to follow. And that's a great segue because that's a topic right now. I can't walk into a dealership without having a conversation that either centers around or leads back to retention. So I want to ask Michael, as more and more dealers are becoming keenly aware and hyper-focused on retention, what are some of the best practices you guys are using in your 2 stores to drive customer retention right now as it relates to the BDC process?
That's a good question. Something that I share that when I started back with Traver Connect 9 years ago is that John kind of explained that I'm a pump-in dealer, and it seems as a typical dealer, I understand sales very well, but service we mainly always don't understand what it takes to work the back end. I can create big sales numbers, but I never could actually, change my service numbers. So when John said I started doing, picking up and delivering cars back 9 years ago, tied really, really well into what's happened to me now. 2 years ago, I started on every new car sold. I gave away 4 free oil changes, 4 car washes, 4 pickups and delivery, and 4 tire rotations. Okay. Every car, every used car, whether it's, and I don't care where it is, we pick it up. We went last week. I'm in New Boston, Texas. We picked up one in Shreveport, Louisiana, 90 miles away. We picked up one in Dallas, Texas. That's 160 miles away. And that's what we do. And people, every time when we deliver the car, and I have a new car delivery expert that tells them that, they think it's a sales pitch, and it's not. Is it profitable? No. But it allows my retention numbers to go through the roof. And that's, as a pump-in dealer, it's the only way I can continue to have any kind of control over my retention numbers, since I am a pump-in dealer. People will travel far and wide to save $5 on a new car, but they will not travel very far to get an oil change or tire rotation. They'll go to the easiest and most convenient. So the only way I thought I could do that was do what I did and take control. And that's one of the reasons why it helps me have a BDC that I outsourced to Traver Connect, because we, excuse my French, did not do a very good job in that. And so I don't have the training or the wherewithal to do what Traver Connect can do. And that's allowed me to help my retention numbers. We focus on picking up and delivering and do the job here. They do the good job of basically answering the phones and scheduling appointments and pre-selling before they get here. So that's just a short little quip about what we do.
There's something else. You're focused on long-term value of a customer relationship versus that one incremental transaction.
Absolutely. And I always have been. I've been in the store for 25 years. And, that's unfortunately, that's both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing that we have been very successful during COVID, because we had a lot of repeats and referral business, and we always have, and we always will. And so it feeds right into, I can't do and hire enough people to answer the phone and do what John can do at a fraction of the cost. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it married in well to my store. I can focus on what we can do here, and we let John Traver them do what they do there.
I love that. John, this is only going to be like a commercial for you, but I'm just going to say it the only way I know how. The fact of the matter is what that does is free up some important capital resources for you to focus more on serving the customer more effectively and keeping the tie to your store long term.
Yeah, I want to speak to that. Before I do speak to return on time, let me just say, I had a recap call with Michael in this year, and I asked him, I said, hey, PPP money and headcount, Scott, you can relate to this. We talked about this. Sandy, you and I didn't get a chance to yet. Sarah, you and I hadn't talked about it. But I said, are you slow to add heads back? And he said, what's interesting? He said, where I'm adding heads is on my pickup and deliver department. Yeah. He said, I'm up too. You did tell me that, didn't you?
I did. We're up.
So he's like, everybody said, nobody lost a job. We kept everybody. So that's really interesting. So he's kind of taken that approach. And I would also say to those that, aren't using a virtual piece, you don't have to. I mean, here's an example of somebody who's doing it on their own in Sarah Vantine. There's all kinds of ways to do it, but there needs to be a vision. And so we'll get to that today. So your question about freeing up time, one of the hidden benefits of taking the calls out of the drive, whether you answer them on the roof, you answer them with a team, in the filing cabinet room, or you've built something out nice like they did at AMSI, or you're virtual, is you're giving back time to advisors. On average, 2+ hours a day of uninterrupted time is given back to them. Now, let me first tell you this. We track everything through the DMS that we do. So like cycle time, hours sold, everything. I mean, we're looking for performance. And there is a good percentage, more than a third, that we answer for, and they don't have a lift in their RO count. Now, 2/3 do. But so in other words, you're giving them time. So just because you give them time doesn't mean they execute, is what I'm saying.
Right. So you're actually improving the transaction value on a per transaction basis.
As an advisor, Sandy, put yourself back in the service lane. Okay, so Scott rolls in. You don't have a phone pinched here, neither do I. We can go shake his hand. We can talk about the soccer balls in the back seat. We can pop the hood. We can wiggle a belt, and we can say, hey, Scott, you're due for the 30K. I definitely recommend we do it today. In today's world back there, though, when we're juggling 15 ROs a day, real talk, and 15 fresh phone calls a day, real talk, per advisor, plus I'm interfacing with a tech, chasing parts at a counter, handling status calls because I don't have texting put in place because we can make that go away too with texting, right?
Yeah.
You only have 50 different vendors that have it. So it's like understanding how all this comes together. Somebody get me on top and say, how do I make this thing hum efficiently for my customer first? And then we have a sustainable business here we call a dealership. So to me, on Shark Tank, you'll see Cuban every once in a while say, hey, Sandy, I love your passion, love your idea, but it's not a company yet. Therefore, I'm out, because he says my time is worth more than my money, right? And so that's sort of what's happening in services. We realize, you know what? It's the opposite of sales. So all those years doing sales calls, it's like squeezing Jell-O when you take the sales call, right? You squeeze too hard, they're gone, right? It's an art and a science put together. You're talking to people you don't see and haven't met yet, but we're trying to create quality showroom traffic. In service, I mean, I'm just going to say it. It's kind of a foregone conclusion. They're on their way in if we don't screw it up. I mean, I'm just going to be super blunt. Yes, you can find me an outlier, but for the most part, that's the facts. So do we have people, like Sarah just said, that are equipped, ready, and able? And then in Michael's case, if not, do we have somebody that's doing it for us? Because we want to make sure we're catching fastballs and framing them up for strikes called service appointments. So average RO last 6 years is up and to the right. It went from 250 to 370. Go look it up. NADA. 6 years. Tick, 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 tick. All you have to have done is exist. And you get to be part of that. CPWP blended. Scott?
So I want to say something, and I want to get to Jamil's question here.
Jamil?
Yeah. So he popped in here. He multitasks.
I see that.
I just have to comment. I like his Austin Powers glamour shot here. Very nice.
I just have to say that you, through all that you just said, John.
Yeah.
You had Sandy at Wiggle the Belt. Sandy's on. Sandy's on day.
God,
like
listen,
60,
let's call a spade a spade. It's the only way I can get my pants on every morning.
That's what I'm saying. He's on day 60 something of a 75. He's happy he can finally wiggle that belt. All right.
What are you doing? Intermittent fasting? What are we doing?
I had my lips sewn shut for about 3 weeks.
Okay. Hey, whatever it takes, right? Let's take care of Jamil. So what does he have?
Well, he's saying and this goes to all of you guys, right? So what is a good appointment rate? And so it might be different for sales and it might be different for service. Yeah. And I'm curious, Michael, are you doing BDC for both sales and service, or just service?
Well, it's funny that you asked, because I've only been doing service for like the last 9 years, but 3 months ago, I just hooked up with John's new sales BDC, and I was extremely skeptical based on what they told me it was going to do. But then when I realized on the time value of the entering of a lead and how his technology works, we're blowing leads through the roof and setting appointments. So I'm now doing both sales and service with Traver Connect. And that's actually, I'm shocked and overwhelmed on how well we're doing.
So then this is a great question for everyone. So Jamil's question is basically saying, how do you guys define what a good appointment rate is for website leads? And then for those leads, what's your typical closing percentage?
Sarah, you want to take that one?
Well, I mean, if this is related to sales, I'm going to say that's something that I haven't really overseen too much in the last little bit. I've been out on maternity leave. So I think, John, I don't know if that may be a better question for you.
Yeah, the schedule. Michael, do you want to chime in on it first?
I mean, from what, as a GM dealer, as another OEM dealer, they say the average is probably 6 to 8, and probably 10 to 12% of the leads receiving is probably a good, and anything above 10 to 12 is probably great, which, that's horrible to think if you get 100 leads, you only get 10 leads you actually schedule an appointment. That's not to say you're even going to sell of those 10 leads, only maybe, 20% of them. So yeah. The percentage of time that we spend on them, is exponentially increased if you can do with what Traver Connect is doing, and its time value of that lead. And John's technology, which I was shocked that it would do, as soon as someone sends out a lead, we're immediately sending a phone call out within literally 2 minutes, and we're scheduling appointments, and like probably I would say 25 to 35% of the time on those leads that we're getting, which before was like 6 to 8 to 10%.
So here's what I would say. His question kind of walks into the Venus flytrap because it's broad. It's not specific. So watch. If I ask Michael and Sarah, your manufacturer web leads, how do you feel about it? You know, publicly, they might say the politically correct thing, but privately, I think we all know what they would say. Hey, there's some fluff in those leads. True or false? Real quick.
True.
Yeah. Okay. So what we're really talking about is what's the how do I convert somebody I can't get on the phone?
Right.
You don't. Okay. So the first question is, what % do we contact? And so you got to figure out how to contact more. And this is one of the areas that really hasn't changed a whole lot in 20 years since the web became part of our daily business, and that is response time. So you have to figure out how to do that using technology and people, but that's the first piece. So the number of people of my total leads, how many do I talk to? Then the second step is it's learning how to talk to people you can't see, that you don't know. So it's keywords and phrases, it's key questions. A lot of times, like Sarah says, they're already down in the funnel and they might even be already on a particular vehicle. Like if it's pre-owned, they may be locked in on one. And what you want to do here is you want to professionally expand their thinking, because I don't know about your stores, but the stores that I've been around, we're taking trades in every day. We have plenty. So the question is, I want to make sure I build enough trust with you and go to work for you. So I would say something like, look, I know that vehicle. I want to make sure it's still here, still available. I'm also thinking about a couple other options we may have. If you're open, I'll also check on those while I got you on the phone. So you may have a second or third option. Is that okay? And it's not like this life-changing moment, but it's like they realize, sure. I mean, there's no harm in that. Okay, well, now I just expanded the search. And so that is very simple, and it's something we should be doing. We should be looking for what else is close, where we're not playing Rubik's Cube here over the phone, right? Where it's got to be absolutely perfect to say I did it. So the scheduled rate, the bottom line is 60% of the people you talk to, that's where you want to live. But the game is how many people can I get to? And then your show rate, you want to be more than half, okay? Like the old show rate has always been showroom floor is 50%. And if you confirm your appointments, if you have, it can even be electronic confirmations like text, et cetera, but you can bump that. In fact, can I tell the story real quick about that, how I stumbled on that years ago? Okay, so Chris Garrett was the general manager at John Elway Toyota, and he became a platform guy for Rod Busher. In fact, Rod Busher was a partner with John, and Rod is the guy that just built and helped sell Vroom, VROOM. You guys saw the deal. Okay, so, I mean, Chris was from Chicago, and I mean, Chris could beat you with a pencil and make you bleed. But he made me better. I mean, he just made me work. I remember our first BD college, I told him, I said, I need your managers here. And he said, well, you got to buy the tickets. And I did. I bought the airline tickets and brought them there. But I mean, that's the kind of guy he was. He always just kept moving the goalpost. So I have one of my trainers at a store, and the trainer calls me. He's like, hey, you taught the confirmation call guide. And it basically goes like this. After the appointment said, I would call you and say, hey, Sandy, John Traver, new car manager at BDC Motors. I just want to extend a hand and say thanks for putting time aside with Sarah. She's great people. She'll be organized and ready for you. And if you need anything, please make sure you say, let me know, and I'll make sure to say hi when you're in. That was the call. Like I always thought, I said, don't confirm the time. Don't confirm the date. Do the opposite. Do the opposite. Let them know they have a friend here in higher places and edify the person they're about to work with, because those are the two big holes. This is 1994. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I said, you can do that within, a couple days of having set the appointment before it comes in. And so my trainer calls me. He's like, hey, JT, Chris has them calling them like 45 minutes after we set the appointment. And I'm like, that's typical Garrett, that's typical Chris. It's like more gas, Yeah. And I said, well, how's it working? And he said, honestly, we're getting a hold of almost everybody. Now, I want to tell you something. When we were doing it, we weren't getting a hold of but 50%. So I said, you know what? Ride the horse. Keep going. And so I tell that story anytime it comes up. It's like, that's a better way to do it. So you don't have to call them a minute later, but within an hour of having scheduled it, to me, it's a natural transactional process that says, hey, I got this. I just want to acknowledge and extend a hand, say thank you. And simple phrases that are friendly and kind and warm and take down the barrier of fear or concern about coming to our store. That was the retailing process then. The idea behind the BDC in the beginning for me was to update an outdated sales process. Scott, you and I talked about it when you were here, right? It was like people were throwing keys on the roof still, and I'm looking at this and I'm going, I'm a young guy, but I'm like, this is a mess. This doesn't even make sense, right?
John, that's why all the OEMs mandate the new buildings. The roofs are a lot higher. You can't get them up there.
That's good.
John, something that you said struck me, and you made the point as you closed out that point, which was you truncated the amount of time in between setting the appointment and getting that call from the GM or the GSM, which I love, right? Because that was going to be my comment. Everything up until that point, I just don't want to wait a couple of days to contact them. But I love the way that you pre-frame the experience that they're about to have, and then also let them know they're going to have somebody else that's on their side when they're coming through the door. You're pre-framing and setting the image in their mind as to what they're going to experience when they walk through the door. And then the trick is obviously making sure that you execute on that when they show up.
Yeah, Sandy. And that's honestly, what is this, 2021? That was 93.
Yeah. Well, not much has changed. We're still the same people.
Well, right? That's what I was going to say.
Adjusting, right?
That's what I was going to say is the original idea was to update an outdated sales process. So here's my question for the group here. Isn't that what we're still doing? Business development, we're still updating and out. Now, it doesn't mean what we did 5 years ago is bad. It just means it doesn't fit like it used to. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So we're still updating. That is, to me, the essence of business development is updating what's outdated. You're developing, you're innovating.
So that's a beautiful comment right before Jabil's question here below. With COVID going on, how have the word tracks changed for sales? Before it was, you pushed hard for appointments, right? And I think that was one of the biggest things that happened immediately when you couldn't bring them in. There was a lot of states where you couldn't bring them in for sales. So they had to change. And all of a sudden everybody realized, oh my gosh, I can get commitments and actually sell it right over the phone. And so has that evolution kind of continued on? What have we learned from that? And what's going on now because of it?
Yeah. Who wants it? Michael, you want that first?
Well, no, I do want it. But what I was going to say is COVID is really, it's just, I guess we're hypersensitive now to what John is saying is that I think we're doing the same thing we did 5 years ago or 3 years ago or even a year ago. It's just that we're having to be more in tune with what we're doing and eliminate some of the mistakes that we're making, and it's and you have to be hypersensitive to what actually is working and what doesn't work. So you change what doesn't work. I'm in Texas, so I'm a little fortunate. We don't even wear masks anymore. So as a result of that, we've not been, I guess, restricted by people showing up, but we have had some who are more, I guess, cognizant of COVID. So we have done more take and deliver or bring here or take the car to them. So I guess have not done as much since, like I said, I was picking up and delivering before. Now we're maybe doing it on the sales side. So we've been somewhat, I guess, lucky, but we have done more. So I don't know if that helps.
Michael, so when we started DWIN, right, we had people, this all started just to talk our way through some of the challenges because it started back last March or early April. And, Sandy's up in New Jersey. He's up in a state that clearly was impacted. Sandy just got a letter from the governor just yesterday saying that he was going to extend the mask mandate for Sandy for another 3 months.
Well, actually, he said it was indefinite for me. That they had noticed that it was a public service that was actually getting a great benefit in the state of New Jersey by covering his face with a mask on a regular basis.
It's already had a major impact and increase boost to tourism. So what Squire had a good question as it goes back to when we were talking about. So a lot of us are doing virtual and digital retailing, right? So I guess what he's asking when he was talking about show rates, how are you guys managing that? Are you have you set appointments to do things virtually as well? And if so, is that show rate any different
Great question.
than actually showing up in person?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say, Squire, yeah, Chicago people are tough. I just wanted to answer that question.
Yes.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Well, it really ties kind of back into the previous question that Jamil asked about the word tracks. I mean, from a show rate perspective and from even a word track perspective, with virtual showings and different things, I mean, to me, that's kind of splitting hairs if it's in person or if it's in somebody's driveway. But really with our word tracks and how we go about doing business, you have to operate at what the customer's level of comfort is. And you have to have a process for each of those comfort levels. And so that might be something like in service, pickup and delivery. They don't want to come into a dealership for whatever reason. And the same thing goes for sales, but you also might have that customer that is completely married to the way that we've always done it. And they want to go and, lick the door handle and see the car in person. And
wait, has Scott been a customer at your dealership already?
But yeah, I mean, it's just something that you have to keep in mind. I mean, we can get kind of paralyzed when it comes to the analytics on things. But, if we really get, crippled by that process where we're just focusing on driving a metric, that does nothing to benefit the customer. You have to have both in conjunction. So, with our word tracks and with our processes, what we really fleshed out was, okay, if this scenario happens, this is the next piece of the process that we're going to do. If it's this scenario, this is how we're going to go about doing it. And then making sure that everybody's aware of what the process is. If we have problems with it, or, like in our case with the state, if the mandate changes, you can quickly reconvene, adapt it. And then, if something doesn't work or it does work, look at that information and then grow from it.
I love what you just said about not simply designing process to cater to a KPI indicator, because the manufacturers have been forcing that down our throats for 40 years, okay, with the advent of CSI. We chase a number, and it has very little to do very often with what the customer is really looking for. And so we get distracted from what our real goal should ultimately be. So I love the fact that you cater to the person or to the customer and not to some KPI metric.
So I want to throw out a disclaimer in the sense that, so in our chat, if somebody's watching, because we're broadcasting live on Facebook, we're doing it on YouTube, we're doing it on LinkedIn. Sometimes people might comment on Facebook as it's going on. We're not going to see that here on our screen. So we have to go back in and comment into Facebook separately, but it seems like we get a lot of the LinkedIn. Great question here. I don't have the person's name for some reason, but I purchased my car via email surprisingly easily, without a lot of trickery or upsell. Is this the new norm, or did I get lucky? Transparency and no going to the back room to talk to the manager. I'll say this, I talk to a lot of dealers. This is the direction, right? I mean, this is not something that we say it often on here. The one thing COVID did, regardless of what industry, because the customer service and experience got better in a lot of ways. I like it when I've got 5 errands to run and I never have to get out of my car. I can just text and say I'm here, and they run something out to my car. It saves me at least an hour during that process. And as a customer, I'm thinking to myself, well, when they lift some of these restrictions, why can't they still just bring it to my car? I don't want to go backwards on. I want to go backwards on a lot of things, but not when it saves me time, effort, or money. I want to continue that path. And so, I'll let you guys answer this guy's question. Fire away.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to take it initially, but here's the thing. And Liza Borchia said this on Clubhouse the other day.
Love her.
Listening in, and she absolutely, it just really resonated with me. And I think, speaking specifically about the sales process, on a vehicle at her dealerships, and she highlighted that really today's consumer, we're all, and I'm guilty of it too, we are a click to purchase transactional customer. We've become that because of players like Amazon. There's the price. I'm going to put it in my cart, click buy, and move on with my day, get the tracking notifications, etc. And historically, the car dealership has been the exact opposite of that. We have our online internet price, and here's the internet price. But then when you come into the showroom, just kidding, we have an addendum. And, and so I think what's really happened is our industry has evolved. We've realized that, or at least the smart dealerships have realized that our customers have gotten very comfortable, and we are consumers too. We've become very comfortable with that Amazon type transaction where here's the price. I know what it is. I can read the description. Let's go. And so the businesses that have embraced that and done really well with it during COVID, I think are going to continue that process, because that's what all of our consumer buying patterns have really pushed us to be more, that's how we buy now. And when you have a dealership or a business that goes against that process, it creates a ton of tension and stress for the customer. And oftentimes you lose that customer.
Brian Benstock is grinning ear to ear right now because he's constantly reminding us that we've got to take a look at the way players like Amazon have disrupted how clients and customers do business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. Hunter, yeah, I agree with you on buying process. We got a little chat over there separating shopping from buying. I did a John Maxwell. I was invited to a John Maxwell event years ago. Got a chance to meet Dan Cathy, and then got a chance to meet a few executives at Chick-fil-A. And there's this one guy who does all the visits. And as you know, with a Chick-fil-A, you don't actually own the Chick-fil-A. You're an operator, right? They actually still retain it. It's like a land lease, basically. But this guy is so good. And it'd be like any of us going through stores every day. And so, first of all, you don't have to be the smartest person in the world to begin to pick up on common denominators, right? So you begin to see like pattern, gap. So he has the same question he asks every operator. And here it is. He says, what are you doing today to grow your business? And he said, what I'm really looking for is, first of all, do they realize they're in charge of growing their business? Do they realize what they do daily actually is the brick in the wall that they're building? Okay. And then I'm looking for great ideas that really make a huge difference. And so, Sarah, it may be around training, or Michael, it may be around outsourcing or expansion. It doesn't, the bottom line is, are they on their business? So Scott, like you and I talked last year when you were here, right? So what I would say is this: I think you got to have a vision, but a vision that is not repeated, that's rarely repeated. A lot of times as leaders, and we're all leaders, we're all leading something, right? Some group. When you don't repeat it, it's also rarely remembered. So, I would tell my kids all the time coming up, look, 80% of what I say to you, I'm going to have said before, I promise you. 20% is going to be fresh because you're due for something new. But most of it is going to be something I've told you another way at another time. And the reason is you need to hear it at that time. And I would just say the same is true for vision. So what are we doing in this retail process? Okay, we're trying to get market share. We're trying to win deals. And so, okay, who do we have to be in order to do that? So that's part of business development. Well, first of all, we have to be easier to work with. We have to be closer to one click, Sarah, right? We got to be true to our word and how we're going to go about this. We probably need to drink our own champagne or eat our own dog food in terms of, hey, is this process really working? Like someone had said, I just saw on LinkedIn, it was the interview you just did in Florida, Scott, the general manager, right, at Germain. And he said, they talk about Carvana. And he said, hey, I'm basically, I shopped them. And there's nothing they're doing that we as dealers can't do better. I could not agree with him more. The frustrating part for me is the potential that we have is so stinking high. It is. It's Michael Jordan high. Okay, or whoever your favorite is. It really is. And it's like, okay, so I think it's 40% innovation. I think it's so there's only two problems in business, right? Knowing and doing. I think it's 40% knowing. That's the innovation. I think it's 60% doing. That's the execution. So that's my take on what we're sort of around right now. You're so close to the fire, and the opportunity is there. But Scott, I'll let you take the mic back.
Yeah, so you brought up the interview. It was with Brian Kramer down at Germain Toyota down in Naples. And
he's a beast.
He is a beast.
It's interesting you brought that up because I actually had wrote down to bring that interview up too because, and I want to go to Michael on this. He had brought up, listen, if you're going to do digital retailing right, make it as easy and frictionless as possible. You've got to make the commitment to deliver on your brand promise. And he quickly learned, all right, here I've got this trade appraisal tool on my site. If I sit here and say your car is this, when it comes in, unless it is, night and day different than what was described.
So you got to own it.
A few $100. He just does the price. He doesn't mess with trying, because all that does is reinforce some of the negative stuff that people have with dealers. Move on. I mean, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, but on average, it's right. You move on, you're quick and easy, and the customer appreciates that. That's what they want. You have to deliver on the brand promise. Mike, I see you nodding your head. Can you expand on that a little?
No, you're exactly right. I mean, the more we can do to be simplified, and I guess not say follow the lead of Carvana and Vroom, I guess the more transparent, the better we're going to be. And that's the problem. I don't think and that's the problem with dealerships. They can't see the forest for the trees, and it's exactly what you said. They feel like if that trade appraisal on that 2015 Traverse on KBB says for 12.8, and it comes here and it had a scratch on the deal, and they want to deduct $200, don't do that.
No.
Give them the 12.8, because like you said, it will average out in the long run, and you'll be miles ahead on retention. And actually, and creating trust, and and an opportunity to met that customer to buy something in an F&I. So, and you got to trade. You didn't have to go to the auction and buy and overpay. That's got a basically blown transmission when it gets here. So,
and how valuable is that right now? I mean,
I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
I have to echo what you're saying, Michael. And here's what dealers and GSMs and desk managers are not looking at, right? Everybody wants to sit around, have a couple of drinks, and talk about the trades that they hooked, right? It's like telling fish stories, right? We hooked a trade, but at the end of the day, my bigger question is, for that one trade that you hooked, how many did you miss?
Exactly.
Because you were trying to hook or rob a trade. And especially if we're talking about doing things online with a high degree of transparency, if you are not looking at the bigger picture, which is all the ones that I missed now go it's a double hit. It's my competitor got more into their car count number and took away from mine. So you've got a loss and you've got a gain outside of your store. That's a double hit in my opinion, but you're focused on the wrong thing. You want to talk about the 1 or 2 or 3 that you hooked throughout the course of the month, and it's probably 10 to 20 times what you've missed on, if that's going to be your modus operandi, especially if we're doing business online.
Right. Well, that's old school mentality, and we've got to adapt the new school mentality if we're going to continue to exist and flourish and grow. If not, we're going to go by the wayside, and you're going to let the Carvanas and the Vrooms of the world take over. And like John Traver just said, dude, we've got the tools, we have the resources, we have the departments, we've got the service centers that these people do not have, and we've got the opportunity to crush them.
Yeah. So, Sarah, we have a question from you from the chat, and this is on service BDC. What are some of the ideas that you've done for recall? Any word tracks that you've seen work well?
Great question, Jamil. So, I mean, with BDC, with recalls, so your OEM and your manufacturer lists, certainly if you're not doing anything right now related to recall, you can absolutely drop some different marketing campaigns to address certain targeted recalls that are going to be really, revenue generating. The problem with those lists oftentimes is, depending on the OEM and depending on where they're getting the data, that information can be very dated. And so, if you're not doing anything along those lines right now, that's certainly a way that you can quickly have some impact to try to move that metric. What we do at our stores that's a little more controlled, and it certainly is more of a long game kind of approach. But what we do is every single vehicle, we have different triggers in our workflows that prompt the BDC for our department for service to make the phone call. And some of those could be like, okay, the customer has not been in 6 months or 5 months or whatever it is. And now we're looking at their average mileage, and it's likely that they're due for service. So that call triggers. One of the things that we do on every single, it doesn't matter what call list they're on, what list gets triggered in that system, we look at that VIN for open recalls every single time without fail. And so that becomes, another bullet in your gun, so to speak. When you have that phone call with the customer, you have more value that you're bringing to that service appointment, because you're telling the customer about, hey, look, your vehicle, it looks like it's due for service based on the predicted mileage, based on the time. It looks like you're due for your 50K. By the way, I've also looked up your VIN and I see that you've got some open safety recalls. There's no charge for those recalls. Let's go ahead and get them addressed at the same time. I've got availability as early as blank and blank. Just go ahead and assume the close, assume the appointment on those. You're going to need to assume on those recalls that the customer is going to want to take care of that on their vehicle. And the more that you can structure those within all of your call campaigns, that's been a tremendous success for our stores. And certainly when there's a manufacturer that has a high paying recall for warranty, that's absolutely something that we might get a manifest list and really hyper target those cars to really move the needle a little more impactfully. But in a day-to-day operation, you should be doing that on every single phone call that you're executing out of your stores. That's
awesome. That was awesome. Can I add something to this? Because she teed it up perfect. Okay. If it's a cold call, I'm going to take Jamil's specific, like if it's a dead end call where we don't get to do a due for service, Sarah, like it's not due for service. It's a recall list. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to say, hi, Michael, I'm calling about your open recall. You do not want to do that unless you're wearing face gear. Okay. And a mouthpiece. The right thing to say in that call is this. It's something around this phrase. You say, listen, the reason I'm calling, our records indicate your vehicle may have an open recall. I want to reach out, double check, and see if this particular recall you've had taken care of yet. Okay, now they're in a position of need. They need me to clarify, okay? And it's possible that they've had this work done. So we do these outbound campaigns for stores that can't get this done. And how do I know that? Well, because I had a broken nose from this process. It's like you say, what do you mean? We just had the recall taken care. Oh, okay, hold on a second. Which recall, right? If you happen to be a manufacturer that has more than one on that vehicle, which is everybody, right? And it's more than Takata airbags today. So, it's basically a confirm. Our records indicate, that's a key phrase. So don't blame it on me. I'm responding to records that indicate there may be a need for your safety. Just want to reach out and see if you've had this attended to, and then get them to lean on you to clarify which one. Now we're working together, and off and away you go. So I just wanted to add what Sarah just said, because she teed it up perfect. There's a couple extra phrases that will make a big difference for you.
Yeah. I think recalls is a great topic for a lot of reasons. So, Sarah, you're calling all these people. One thing that we're noticing around the country, especially in the areas that have been kind of either quarantined or restricted the most, is that when they're calling for these normal service intervals, their calls are not as accurate or reliable in terms of the timing as they used to be, because it's harder to predict the mileage people are driving now, because they're not driving as much as they were in normal times, right? And so what we're starting to see in a lot of the bigger metro markets especially is a slowdown in service. And what's happening is the recall part is becoming even more important, because it doesn't matter what their mileage is on that. If they have an open recall, that still needs to happen, and that work still needs to get done. What's beautiful for the dealer and for the customer is when those customers come in, you're almost guaranteed 100% revenue from it, right? And what's great for the customer is they get a safety issue fixed at zero expense to them. So it's a win for everyone involved. Whereas I guess if your algorithms are thrown off a little bit on the mileage, you still have a big win when it comes to focusing your efforts here.
Well, and Scott, another thing too, and I'm glad you brought that up on the mileage, because that is commonly an objection when we have, especially this past year, people will say, oh, well, I hardly have driven it. I work from home now. But one of the things that you also have to be aware of is most manufacturers, there's a few exceptions like Honda, but most manufacturers have a time or mileage requirement on their vehicles. And so a lot of times customers don't realize that if they don't have the service performed, like their general maintenance, they may have not hit 5,000 or 10,000 miles, but they've hit it on time. And what can happen long-term is their warranty could get voided. So we actually have had that discussion. And because we also sell those extended warranties, that's another topic that we can bring up with the customer. Hey, I certainly understand that you haven't driven the mileage, but I just wanted to let you know as well. So it's also, our records show it's due based on time. And so your warranty is due based on time or mileage. And we want to make sure that you have your vehicle properly maintained so that down the road, should there be an issue, that the warranty company is most likely to cover it. And having that little extra push, we've been able to secure a lot more appointments because the customer honestly doesn't realize it. They think the mileage number, it says it right there on my sticker, it says this is my mileage that I get my oil change done, and they don't recognize the other part of that equation, which is the time element.
Yeah, and that goes right to what Squire.
It's exactly what Squire's saying. Yeah.
So that.
And by the way, it's not just the oil change. If the car's sitting idle for a long period of time, you're talking about batteries. You're talking about flat spots in tires. You could be talking about fuel being corrupted. I mean, there's a number of different things that we've got to start to look at as a result of the coronavirus lockdown the last 10, 11 months, where we can have real conversations with folks and not appear as though we're just trying to sell them nonsense.
Yeah, no, that's great. Scott, I want to add something. You opened a little bit of a door. I just want to augment. So if you look at the RO count year over year, NADA, 2015 through 2021, 6 years, and I took through June of last year, and I just done this event, Sarah, in December for the Jumanji deal, right, for Ford. The RO count was just over 300 million US total, 315 million to be exact. I think 2020 or 2019 was 316. So it was a little bit of an increase. June, halfway through the year, June 30th, it was 125 million. So what's 2 times 125 million, everybody? All you math majors.
Yeah,
that's 250. And the last time I checked, 250 is less than 316. So what that means is we were halfway through 2020, right? And we were already trending greatly under and up into the right environment. So there's one of two things that are happening. Either those folks are servicing somewhere else, not likely under COVID, or two, there is a pendulum swing of business coming that you want to kind of have your helmet on for and be ready. And so, Scott, I kind of just picking up where you left off, but I've watched these numbers all the time just to try and understand, like, where are we at in this trend? Sandy, much like what you do, looking for those changes. So I would just warn our dealers and say, look, I mean, there is a bulk of business. To your point, Scott, the mileage and the driving pattern is short. But you know what that means? I mean, you got time to put more, get your technicians staffed up, get your training programs moving, everything around less is more, in terms of the experience, whether it's texting or mobile payments, get that ready because the circus is coming. I mean, you have an extra bulk of business sitting out there that you're going to get your share. That's what I would do if I were sitting in a dealer seat.
Especially when you throw in the time factor that Sarah and Squire were mentioning in terms of
absolutely.
We're 14 minutes over, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time on here. So I have one more question, and then I'll let Sandy kind of close it out. The one thing Sandy and I have noticed, the BDC role, I mean, that was probably one of the most talked about topics, or I guess teams within a dealership for the most part of 2020, because everyone saw the evolution of like, wow, we got to elevate this team. It's become more important, especially as we move into digital retailing, start handling more deals, whether it's on the internet or by phone. For the stores that decided, all right, I've got this BDC or I've been outsourcing it, whether it's internal or virtual, it doesn't matter. But man, I gotta up my game here. I've kind of half-assed it, right? And so now it's time I really focus in, because I know I have to fine-tune that. That's a big opportunity for me. What are some of the pitfalls? What are some of the challenges? Some of the opportunities, pitfalls? Whatever. I'm going to ask this with a broad brush. I'll let you take it anywhere you want to. What advice would you give someone that wants to make a commitment to a big improvement this year on this?
Well,
Sarah?
Scott, that's a great question. And actually, I said earlier when we were discussing that I had some interesting data that I was going to share that ties in with BDC reps and some of the things that they should be keeping in mind when engaging with customers. And your question actually segues into that perfectly. So one of the things that I've done since being back from maternity leave is, I was out for a little bit and we got a little rusty. So every store does, you always are looking for continuous improvement. And one of the things, I have 5 new hires right now that are undergoing training with me currently. And one of the exercises that I love to do is do price shops specifically. And the reason for it is because oftentimes that is something that a rep really gets stuck on when a customer is asking for price. They feel like, okay, I'm shopping with my pocketbook. When I quote this out, I'm going to get a no or get yelled at. And so they anticipate that objection with the customer. They're ready for that customer to object to whatever price quote they give. So what we did this last week with my new hires, I gave them homework to do. And so we've got 3 brands, and they're pretty lateral in terms of, vehicle size, make. So I gave each of them a vehicle. I said, I want you to take a 2018 Camry. I want you to take a 2018 Altima. I want you to take a 2018 Accord. And I want you to call all of the dealerships in our area that OEM is specific to. So if it's Toyota, call our Toyota competition. If it's Nissan, call our Nissan competition. I want you to call all of the independents. And I want you to ask them the price of an oil change. And I want you to make some notes. I want you to note, how easy was it to talk to the person on the phone? What was the information that you got from that call? What was the price? And then, did they offer you an appointment? And so we did 24 shops all around the local Charlotte area, all the way out to South Carolina. And we had some really interesting data. Of the 24 shops, we were actually more competitive on our pricing than almost all of our competition. And because of that too, there's also value that we have as the dealer, right? We have the certified trained technicians. We have all of those extra features that the independents don't have. You're fighting perception. Exactly. And to take it even further.
Internally and externally, by the way.
Yes. and even further than that. So, our competition, our OEM competition nearby, we found the same, pitfalls that a lot of dealers have right now, which is when they were doing their price shop, they called and they asked for an oil change price. They got the receptionist. The receptionist transferred them to a service advisor. The service advisor didn't even bother to get their name, just spit out a price quote and said, it's around $64. All right. Anything else you need? No? All right. And out of all 24, there was only one location, and it was one dealership suggested that they make an appointment to save time, but never actually went through and offered it.
Sarah, what you're speaking to right now is the fact that our competition from a dealership perspective is not the other dealers.
Correct.
It's the independent players, because they've figured out the holes in our processes and they have exploited those. And that's why they are camped out right around our locations. That's not by accident. We talk about it with David Boyle of Tire Profiles all the time, another guy who I love to chop it up with on this topic.
Me too. Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that competition, that's the independents, they're not cheaper. They're not less expensive. And the amazing part too is they don't go through the process to even book an appointment, because in their mind, you don't need it. You just roll in when you want to and get your oil changed. But what we were talking about with our team, the thing that's going to be so important and critical for a BDC and for a dealership to do is just ask for the business. It was brain damage to get all of those 24 calls in. I mean, all of the new hires that we have were just like, that was excruciating. I got transferred all over the place. It was just a nightmare. And I said, now think about this. In our process, how impactful is that if you just have that voice on the other end of the phone, offer you the price of the oil change, tell you what else we're going to do, give you the benefits of coming to us for service, and then in that same sentence say, by the way, I've got availability as early as this afternoon, this evening. Do you want to come in today, or is tomorrow better?
You're either or them. I love it, Sarah. I love the technique. Either or, make it easy for them to make a choice. Give them
and
options.
our competition is not asking that question.
Let's take it a step further. Let's do all of that and then do what Michael's been doing the last 9 years.
Pick up and delivery.
Would you rather come in, or do you want me to come pick it up and bring it back to you?
Bingo.
Absolutely. But that.
So Cox did a big study on that. We've had them on the show and a couple of their clients over the last few shows, and the overwhelming majority of consumers want their car to be picked up and dropped off. But the study that they did, only 50% of the dealers who started that process during COVID plan to continue it. So I think there's a huge opportunity for the dealers who are going to continue doing that or plan to do it to pick up a lot of market share in service. Tons.
Yeah, we actually created with some of our clients QR codes throughout the showroom facility, the customer lounge, where they could just shoot it quick at a Dare to Compare board. That's just basically a web page. It also has a link to set the appointment. So we use the sales process and the sales team to actually promote the service department and the fact that it is more competitive. It's very easy to make an online appointment. You could do it right from the palm of your hand. I mean, so it ties right into just the one-click approach that Sarah alluded to at the very beginning.
Absolutely.
Michael, anything specifically with relation to BDC in your store that you think dealers should be focusing on that you guys are looking at?
Well, you have to understand, remember, I'm not very good at BDC. That's why I outsourced it to Traver Connect. So he's my expert. And, I just I lean on them and let my people just write service here in the store. So anytime there's a suggestion, I try and collaborate with Mr. Traver and try and learn from him because, like I said, when we started, 9 years ago, we've probably more than doubled our business in the last 9 years. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking to double it again in the next 3 because of what COVID's done and made us more efficient and what we're going to do with Traver Connect.
Love it.
Hey, Michael, you've been doing the pickup and drop off. So we've got a good question here. How do you handle that?
Well, like I said, if it's done through the BDC, we let Traver Connect schedule the appointment, and they send us an email notifying us, and then we get the service director or we get one of the service writers to call them back and tell them what time we're going to pick it. Like I said, I started out with 1 driver. Now I've got 6 full-time drivers, and I've got a driver coordinator who's also, I guess, a part-time service writer, and that's her job is to schedule appointments for the next day.
So Matt's asking you, what's your contingencies for damage during transport if it happens? Over 9 years, certainly something has happened, right? Well, how do you handle it?
Well, and we give them a service rental agreement, and we get their insurance, because that's one of some of the new things all the OEMs are doing, making you have mandatory CTPs or courtesy transportation, and you should be collecting a credit card with every transaction. So it's no different than Avis or Hertz does. They don't loan cars for free, and they expect you to put gas in it. Some of that we don't do, but if there is damage, we do expect them to pay it. And if it's something minor,
I think Matt's asking, what if you damage theirs during transport?
Oh, well, then that's on us.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is, and I think John and I are on the same page, is everybody's walking around with one of these things these days, the old smartphone. If you've got damage, you can actually take the cell phone and just take a picture of whatever existing damage is there, and that can be emailed right to the customer to let them know in advance. Hey, we noticed a couple of things. Would you like us to take care of this ding, dent, or glass repair while the vehicle's in for regular maintenance?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. I don't think we use it as a negative. I want to turn it into a positive and an opportunity to do business.
That's right. And you have companies popping up, Traver, Draiver. You guys familiar with Traver? Anthony Montero is with Traver. Anthony was with me in Houston at Traver Technologies years ago. And then he went to eLeads for a number of years, and now he's over this deal. And it's basically a platform that, think of it like you created Uber. It's the software that coordinates all the drivers in the markets. So if you're not like Michael, where you're really putting your chin out there on the line, you're okay, this is how it works. And so what they do, Michael, is when they get to the car, they take a picture. It's all checked in. They have to be dressed a certain way. And then it's no different than when a car's checked into the drive. So it's really his approach it's the true entrepreneurial, you know what I mean? And the approach that Sandy and I are talking about is the scalable technology. I trust you, but just in case, here's the evidence kind of approach, you know? So I just want to close by just saying a couple things. I think one is, is the BDC a waste of time? And hopefully if you're watching this today, you're looking at this saying, no, it's not a waste of time. If you're lacking traction, then it may be about approach. I remember when a Chris Garrett would call and say they were struggling with certain results, it was usually floor up, follow up. We called it foo-foo, and had fun with it. But he said, hey, it's just not working. And I'd listen, and I'd say, okay, so what part doesn't work? Is it the part where we call? Is it the part where we talk intelligently? Is it the part where we listen? And then he'd cuss me out, say a few things. Right. And I say, Chris, you're like the athlete telling me the weight room doesn't work. The weight room works, bro. It works. You got to work
your push-ups.
Yeah, you got to work it. So that's one. Two is, I would just say, as you walk out of this, you go, okay, where do I start? I would say always start by prioritizing. And you say, give me an example. Okay, an example would be, we've mentioned Ben Stock a few times. So Ben Stock's on Long Island. He's dealing with 20 plus million people. He's not New Boston, Texas, Michael, right? And Sarah, what city is closest to you? Your main city is what?
Charlotte.
Okay. And how far out are you? You're
maybe 15 miles.
Okay. So the difference between those markets and what he's sitting in, there's a difference. Okay. Yes, that doesn't mean we can't learn things and model things, but let me tell you what you can model that Brian does really well. You always have a choice. Do things right or do the right things. And you want to do both. But the thing is, if you get stuck up in doing everything just perfect, you might be working on what's not most important right now. You may have done a great job, but it's step 3. So what Brian does, and I'll tell you a quick story. I watched him do his presentation enough times on the Ford Fixed Ops Roundtable deal. And, it was funny because he's talking about delivering a car, the wrong car, back to the customer. And he's kind of like grinning, like we would all grin, like, we screw up once in a while, we deliver the wrong car. And I love that because to me, that's real world. Like, there's people in it going, well, what if you deliver the wrong? Well, let me let you down. You're going to deliver the wrong car, Scott.
Absolutely.
You're going to screw this up. But here's the thing.
It depends on what car you deliver to them. If it's an upgrade, they're like, all right.
Well, there you go. There you go. Thanks for
well played. Well played, SJ.
But the bottom line is, I guess what I'm saying is what's most important. And it's going to be on the front end. It's going to be showroom traffic or showroom leads that are converting into deals. How do we get there? In the back, it's going to be load the shop. You got to catch the calls to load the shop. And you're going to get inside those calls. You're going to drink the champagne and say, okay, like Sarah said, you're going to shop, kind of taste it and say, is this our best?
Right.
And the thing about potential is you never actually tap it all. You just don't. So that's encouraging to me. That's good news. Scott, man, thanks for putting this together. I don't feel like we hardly scratched the surface, but thank you.
An open invite to come back, John Traver, anytime you want.
Say when.
Love to see you, Traver. Come back here again. Yeah, so, no doubt. And one thing, just to dovetail what you said, John, I see so often people making strategic and tactical decisions based on the 10 to 20% of the business that will go wrong versus the 80, 85 to 90% that go right. And you're never going to make progress that way. Perfection doesn't exist.
Correct.
Yeah.
Agreed, brother. Yeah. Hey, we'd love to be back. You just say the word. I hope the audience benefits. I know there was stuff talked about today that can't do anything but help. So great vision, Scott, Sandy.
Thank you, guys.
I want to thank all of you for taking the time. I mean, nobody's compensated for coming on D-Win and sharing their expertise and their experience and their solutions. So I want to thank you for your generosity, all three of you today. It makes all the difference in the world. And you see, we've had great engagement from the viewers that are out there in the audience, and it's going to help a ton of people. So that's the objective for us every time. The other thing I would encourage people that are watching right now or watching on the replays is to make sure that you reach out to these folks vis-a-vis LinkedIn, Clubhouse, Instagram, Facebook, wherever it happens to be. By the way, can I get a follow back from you, John Traver, on Clubhouse, for God's sakes?
Yeah, did you send me a link?
Time out. I looked at John's profile on Clubhouse today. He's
following 17 people.
No, 17 people are following him. He's only following one.
I just started. I'm green. I saw Sarah.
Listen,
and
JT, I'm willing to fly to Texas to buy dinner if I can just get a simple follow back, for God's sake.
Okay, but only because you said that.
All right, deal. So I encourage everybody to follow each other, certainly up on stage and in the audience, because, as I said, the generosity is flowing as always. So thank you, guys. I also want to give a plug to our Clubhouse room coming up next Tuesday night at 7:30. Scott and I will be hosting another Move, Crush, Count room on Clubhouse. It'll be exciting. We had a 3-hour room last night. That was absolutely fantastic. The contributions that we got from everybody up on stage and in the audience was awesome.
Let me tell you, Michael, and we had an idea last night come up from a guy in was it Kansas? In Kansas, I forget where.
Nebraska.
In Nebraska. It was a phenomenal idea what he does and how he.
Oh no, you're talking about Danny. Danny?
Yeah, Danny.
Danny's in Missouri. He's Kansas City.
Okay, I knew he was close to Kansas or Kansas City. I knew it was related to that somewhere. But this Clubhouse, the ideas that are being shared are just unbelievably good.
Yep.
And so one of the things that he does is he coordinated something with Dave Ramsey, but then he started doing outreach programs where he had people coming into his dealerships for seminars on improving their financial situation, credit repair, all these type of stuff. And of course, car dealers, we understand not only does that help our brand and help the community we serve, but also hopefully down the line leads to business. So but it was an incredible idea that he shared. And guys, pretty innovative. I mean, I
loved him. I reached out to him on LinkedIn immediately last night, and I'm looking forward to connecting with him throughout the Clubhouse experience for sure.
Yeah. So, all right, guys, I want to thank you all. And like Sandy said, make sure you visit Sarah, connect with Sarah she's on all the channels. Michael, connect with him on all the channels. John, he is looking for more followers on Clubhouse.
Oh. You make it sound like he's on one of the dating apps, for God's sake.
Kardashian of BDCs.
Hey, John, get on there because I will tell you this. So I wear both hats, right? I wear the dealer hat and the vendor hat. And I was in a room about vendor-dealer relations. And, of course, all the vendors are complaining because the dealers never pick up the calls. And I'm just sitting there like, and me and David Long are like, listen, we don't want to get to know you. We don't want to tell you our business. We don't want, and so, but I have talked to more vendors that if they had tried to call me prior to Clubhouse, I would have never picked up the phone. I just don't have the time to answer all the calls, right? But I've listened to them on Clubhouse, right? And then you're sharing ideas. You feel like you've become friends with. I've taken more vendor calls in the last 2 weeks and set up meetings. So that's the end, So John, you need to get in there because you're going to love it.
No, and the knowledge exchange is spectacular. It really is.
Yes, it is. It's awesome.
All right, so let's put a bow on it, guys. I want to thank you once again. I want to remind everybody we are back on Clubhouse Tuesday night at 7:30. We'll see you there. We've got the Fourth Box Live event, and I want to extend invitation to the three on the screen that are with us for sure. June 22nd through the 25th of this year in Louisville. It's going to be another fantastic event. It's unlike anything else that's in the marketplace right now. There is no other experience like we've put together through the team at J&L and my team over at Applied
And Sarah, you like horses. This is horse country.
Yes, I'm down.
Listen, we like bourbon, we like business, we like cigars. We have fun doing all three of them. So
Look at Coleman. Look at Coleman.
Right. Wow.
Michael, then I expect you to be in the seat right next to me in June.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, sir.
And John Traver on the other side. And actually, John Traver, you're going one over. Sarah, you're right next to me as well.
Okay.
100%.
All right. Let's do
I'll
it.
be there.
All right, so
All right,
we're going to go to our fourth box. By the way, it's going to be renamed to Business Bourbon and Cigars, but
We'll go
we'll
rebrand
go to that
bad boy.
hype video right now, and then we'll close her out. All right.
Awesome job, guys.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Hey,
you.
listen, the fourth box isn't for everybody. It's only for those people that want to have fun, have a bourbon, smoke a cigar, and come up with absolutely ingenious business and brainstorming ideas.
I could do this all night long, guys.
I love to be a disruptor.
The first guy that gets that done is the winner.
You can't get any better than this. But don't worry, whatever happens in the fourth box stays in the box, baby.
This is some good shit. These notes are big.